In 2019, a paper landed that quietly buried 50 years of NLP wisdom. It didn't announce it. It didn't argue about it. It just used 50,257 subword tokens instead of words, and outperformed every word-based system in the field. That paper was GPT-2, and the assumption it broke was the deepest one in NLP. The assumption that the word was the basic unit. Because if the word is not the basic unit, a lot of what NLP had built on top of it turned out to be scaffolding you didn't need. Last episode, we lined up the 3 techniques: lemmatization, stemming, subword. Subword won. But why it won is a story. And today, we tell it. Because it wasn't just a better tokenizer, it was a phase change in how the whole field thinks about language. Here's the puzzle. The old wisdom said, first identify words, then analyze them, then compose them into meaning. The new wisdom says, treat the input as a byte stream. Let a neural network figure out its own units, and don't ask what a word is. 2 completely different mental models, and the second one, arguably, won. Today's 3 beats. First, what the old wisdom actually was, and what it took for granted for 50 years. Second, the GPT-2 moment, what Radford's paper actually did and why it stunned the field. Third, the collateral damage. Which of the old NLP tasks still make sense, and which ones the field just quietly stopped caring about? Beat 1. What was the old wisdom? Look at any NLP textbook from before 2019. Chapter 1, Tokenize. Chapter 2, POS tag. Chapter 3, Parse. Chapter 4, Semantic role labeling. The whole pipeline assumed that if you got the words right, and the analysis of the words right, meaning would follow. This is the Chomsky-era view. Structure first, meaning second. And that view was productive. It gave the field WordNet. It gave us the Penn Treebank. It gave us the whole idea of morphological analysis as its own subfield. Some of the best minds in cognitive science spent 40 years asking, what's the right theory of the word? What's the right unit for computation? What's the mental lexicon shaped like? And then, the neural revolution started. Word-to-vec in 2013? Glove in 2014, suddenly words could be represented as vectors in a geometry that captured meaning. That felt like a win for the word-centric view. Words were still the basic unit, just now they lived in a fancy vector space instead of a dictionary. Beat 2. The GPT-2 moment. February 2019. OpenAI publishes language models, are unsupervised multitask learners. Alec Radford, lead author. The model uses subword tokens, not word-to-vec vectors, not lemmatized forms, 50,257 byte pair encoded tokens. And it doesn't stem or lemmatize anything, it just eats bytes. The results were quietly devastating. GPT-2 could summarize documents without being trained to summarize. It could translate between languages without being trained on parallel corpora. It could answer questions without a question-answering dataset. All from one objective: predict the next token. All from one input format: a stream of BPE subword tokens. Word-based baselines that had taken years to build got smoked by a general-purpose byte muncher. And the field lost its mind. Because if a byte muncher beats your specialist, either your specialist was doing something wrong, or the byte muncher is doing something you didn't understand. Both things turned out to be true. And the follow-up papers, GPT-3 Llama, Claude, all doubled down on the subword token bet. Beat 3. What actually became scaffolding? Look at the pre-2019 pipeline again. Part of speech tagging. Modern LLMs don't tag parts of speech at all, and they answer POS questions correctly anyway. Constituency parsing, not a component of any modern chatbot. Named entity recognition, still useful for pipelines but no longer a required step. Morphological analysis, not needed in the forward pass. But some things survived. The 5 layers of language. Phonology, morphology, syntax, semantics, pragmatics, those are still real. Because they describe the structure of language, not the pipeline for computing it. Even if the modern LLM doesn't have a distinct morphology module, morphology is still a real fact about English versus Turkish. And when the LLM makes mistakes, it makes them along those same layer boundaries. So here's what to take away. The word is not a special unit. Subwords work fine. Byte level works too. The 5 layers of language are still real. They just live inside the model's weights instead of in a pipeline diagram. And the field has moved from analyzing language to predicting it. It's a completely different discipline than it was 10 years ago. 3 takeaways before the quiz. 1. Pre-2019, NLP assumed the word was the basic unit. 50 years of tools were built on that assumption. 2. GPT-2 quietly proved you can beat those tools with 50,000 Subword tokens and no analysis pipeline. 3. The old subfields, POS tagging, parsing, morphological analysis, became optional. The 5 layers of language are still real. They just live inside model weights now. Quiz 1. What did GPT-2 demonstrate about tokenization? A words are still the best unit. B. You can use 50,000 Subword tokens and outperform word-based specialists. C. Byte-level input never works. Or D. BPE only works for translation. B. Subword 1. GPT-2 used 50,257 BPE tokens and beat specialists that had spent years building word-based pipelines. And the win was decisive enough that every major model since, GPT-3, GPT-4, Llama, Claude, followed. Quiz 2. Which of these became optional in modern LLMs? A part of speech tagging as an explicit pipeline step. B. The concept of morphology as a real linguistic layer. C. The English language. Or D. Studying language at all. A. POS, tagging as an explicit step, became optional. But note the crucial distinction. POS distinctions are still real in language. The model just doesn't need a separate module to compute them. Morphology, the 5 layers, the whole theoretical scaffolding, still valid. What died was the engineering pipeline. Quiz 3. How did the field of NLP change after GPT-2? A. It became identical to computer vision. B. It moved from analyzing language to predicting it. C. It stopped existing. Or D. It went back to using symbolic parsing. B. Analyze to predict. Pre-2019, you built pipelines that analyzed language. Post-2019, you train models that predict the next token. The theoretical layers of language are still real, but the practical work shifted almost overnight to a different mental model. Back to the puzzle. 9 videos in, we've walked from phonology through morphology and the lexicon and tokenizers and productivity and lemma versus stem. And now the biggest twist. After all that, most modern systems don't explicitly use any of it. They eat bytes, they learn structure, they emit tokens, and the field still has to describe what happens inside that black box. Next video wraps up Lecture 2, the recap. Next time, the recap of Lecture 2. Everything you need to remember before we climb into syntax. And a preview of what's coming in Lecture 3. Grammar, ambiguity, and why colorless green ideas sleep furiously broke half a century of language understanding. Hit subscribe.